My freshman year had its ups and downs, but ultimately I was grateful for the experience. I learned a lot and made huge strides in my game along the way. Not to mention the bond I had made with my teammates in the locker room. And even though I wasn't as efficient as I set out to be, I like to believe that year one was still a success. I acquired a couple of awards and got to be out there amongst the elite. But now that my freshman year is behind me, I set my eyes on year two. My sophomore year began with one of the hardest decisions of my life. I'll just come out and say it. I'm transferring. I've got nothing but love for Coach Tucker, Coach Reed, and my teammates I went to war with every week, but I felt lost in the sauce. I was never a focal point, and for my dream to become a reality, I needed the chance to prove myself as a top back in the nation. And that's what Coach Brent Key and the running back Coach McKenzie loved about me. Yeah, you got it.
That Georgia Tech sent a message! And we ain't dead yet!
I'll be transferring and attending Georgia Tech. I'm going to be a yellow jacket, baby! After talking to the coaches, it was clear that we all had a similar drive and passion for the game. This year was going to be a breakout party for all of us. I could feel it. It was time to get to work. Our goal was to set the tone in our season opener against an FCS school who we were projected to be convincing. I started out on the right foot with back-to-back effective runs behind the Hogs. In our first drive of the game, our offense continued to be a real problem for the opposing defense. And I managed to record our first tutty of the season. Let's go! Throughout the first half, our offense continued to be as smooth as silk, and in result, we cruised to the end zone again with little to no resistance. As you may have guessed, our offense continued to click on all cylinders, and I felt as if I was thriving. And the offensive coordinator had no problem letting me loose. And I kept eating my food, terrorizing the defense in every way possible. I watched on as we kept tacking on points, dominating in every facet of the game. We sent our fans home happy with the lopsided win, and even though it was only an FCS team, we did what we needed to do today. And this win will set the tone for our entire season. In addition to the win, I had my best game as a collegiate athlete to date, with 156 yards and a tutty to the crib. I really believe I found my home. We traveled to Wallace Wade Stadium to clash with an undefeated Duke team. The Blue Devils, being in our conference, made this our first real test of the season, and I was excited to see what we were really made of. It's time to make a statement. It was pouring buckets during the game, and I was praying it wouldn't really affect us. And I may have jinxed us early on as my boy Zach threw his first INT of the season. We struggled from that point on in the first half, but I was determined to get us out of the funk in the return game as I still subbed in for special teams occasionally. And using my experience from last season, I knew that all we needed was one spark, and that spark was well received as Zach threw an absolute dot shortly after getting us back in the ballgame. In the second half, we began to play the caliber of football we knew we were capable of, and we showed no signs of slowing down as I blazed past every defender in my longest run of the season, all the way to the house for a 52-yard tutty. This game was an absolute war, and I wanted to finish the goal line drive with my team, but I got hurt on this run. I couldn't be more frustrated. In the end, it came down to a desperation drive, and we were determined to fight the whole way, but we couldn't get it done. This was an extremely heartbreaking loss. We fought tooth and nail to take this home, but it wasn't meant to be. We start off conference play 0-1, but on the bright side, I had my second consecutive 100-yard game, and my place in the offense seemed to be solidified. We set out to bounce back again in our second conference game versus the Tar Heels, and losing again was just not an option for us. We didn't exactly start off well with this INT in the end zone, but that didn't stop us from fighting. And I watched from the sideline as we put up the first points on the board. The run game was just as efficient as it was in our last showing, and I took our loss personal. So with every down, I played with a chip on my shoulder, but we couldn't get away from making critical errors, and this horrendous pick six is evidence of that. I guess Zach felt awful for his mistake last drive because he started toting like crazy, but the drive ultimately ended up with another field goal. We have to do better. I wouldn't go down without scratching and crawling, taking another return so close to the crib. I gotta be able to finish, and in result, we scored in the next couple of plays to keep this thing alive. But UNC have to have paid off the refs because somehow this two-point conversion got negated. The script was in full effect, but they couldn't stop our will as I watched on the sideline as we took the lead late in the game. I don't know how the coaching staff isn't fired after this decision, but instead of kicking a field goal, they decided to go for the win to no avail. That win was way too close for comfort. But hey, a win is a win. The Yellow Jackets were now 1-1 in conference play. We still had a shot at being one of the best teams in the nation. Our next game was without a doubt one of our most important games all season. The Battle of the Tech Mo Bowl. Forget records, standings, and the like. We had to win this. This game was a battle of pride, but I also wanted to continue my consistent play as well. And apparently my team felt the same way, as Dylan Leonard caught an easy tutty to set the tone for the rest of the game. In the second, I started rumbling and stumbling, using my lightning speed to open up a gap on the scoreboard. And apparently me and the O-line was on a heater. We kept tearing up the defense in the first half. I scored my second tutty of the game. Let's go. There was nothing the defense could do with us, and I'm convinced they didn't know what to defend against. The run game was as reliable as ever, and the pass game didn't disappoint in the slightest. It was now just a matter of managing the clock. But we did one better by punching the ball in for my third tutty of the game, potentially putting this one away. We essentially dominated this game on the way to a win. I take home player of the game honors, and what a better time to do it than in a heated rivalry game. The crowd was going bananas, and I'm glad they got to celebrate this. They wanted it just as bad as us. In our fourth conference game in a row, we hit the road to do battle in the eye of the hurricane. We stepped foot in Hard Rock Stadium to stand in front of the U. This was a statement game for us. Not only was this our first ranked opponent, but an undefeated one at that. This was our chance to show that we were nothing short of a powerhouse. We knew we'd have an uphill battle, but we weren't going to break so easily. We were facing some of the most elite blue chippers. But as a team, that meant nothing to us. We were going to battle with talent, but most importantly with heart. And by the end of the half, we got a little closer to making this thing a tie game. We came with the same grit and intensity in the third that we had in the first half. And those attributes helped us tie up the game late in the third. But in the end, after Miami scored once more, they were just too much for us. They controlled the ball with consistency and ended up running out the clock at the end. Yeah, we wanted to win badly, and we were frustrated, but we left it all out on the field. All we could do is look on to next week's game and try and bounce back. In our next game, we went head to head with the Cougars of BYU, and me along with my team started a revenge tour. And I became the catalyst, punching in for our first tutty of the game, and we continued to apply pressure throughout the first half, leading to an easy second rushing tutty for your boy behind the hall. But the Cougars weren't exactly intent on going away. Regardless of that, my mentality stayed the same, and apparently so did my team's, as a dot down the middle expanded the lead in the third quarter. But BYU wasn't finished yet, as I watched on the sideline as they drew up a beautiful play to stay in the game. As much as they battled, I didn't think anything was stopping our offense from putting this game away, as our relentlessness continued to be a real problem for the defense. Even with our offense's determination, BYU just wouldn't give up. And somehow, some way, they actually managed an onside kick recovery, breathing new life into their morale. And they took advantage of that by marching down the field and taking the lead with little to no effort. With our defense absolutely folding, we had to pray for a miracle, and it just didn't happen. And we walk out of Lavelle Edwards Stadium with another disappointing loss. On the bright side, the offense came to play today, and I accumulated the most rushing touchdowns of any game in my collegiate career so far, as bittersweet as it was. In our next game, we went up against a 4-2 Syracuse team looking to take advantage of our losing streak. So we had to bring out the Goldies for this one to revitalize the team, and the good luck charm seemed to work perfectly as I scored our first TD of our opening drive. Throughout this week in practice, Coach let the entire roster know that our recent play was well below us, and that fire he lit surged through us in the first quarter. And before I could even blink, it was a 2-score game. By the third quarter, we still had a solid hold on the game's momentum, and I was making the defense look foolish. Even with the Orange finally scoring, I continued my high level of play, but that didn't stop our opponents from tying the score up late in the fourth quarter. It was time to clutch up, and Zach showed no fear on this late drive, and that boy was giving the wide outs dip and dodge. He snapped, that's my QB. But with the game on the line, Coach put the ball in my hands, and I ran it in as slick as ever for the game-winning tutty. After a couple of losses, this win was a breath of fresh air. We needed this, and to top it all off, I leave with player of the game honors and another 100-plus yard game. It's lit. This is the type of win to get us back on track. After an electric win at home, we hop back on the road to say hi to the Cavaliers and what would be another tough conference matchup. We've had our bumps and bruises, and the team felt like now was the time to earn all the respect we deserve. It was just a matter of manifesting it, and we plan to do that on the field. Our offense starts by running the ball early and often, and I really can't complain. And as long as Coach will call my number, I'ma tote that rock. But having a serviceable QB works just as well in the end zone, and we take the lead first in this low-scoring affair. Despite us taking a while to put up points, our defense was patient, and it seemed like they were having no parts of losing today. But even they couldn't hold them forever, so we had to make something happen fast in the fourth. And if I had to have everyone jump on my back, I was determined to do so. But with our play, with under 3 minutes to go, it wasn't looking good, and we could never give ourselves a chance with a check down. King scared to bomb that thing. I couldn't have been more disappointed. disappointed. It seems like every time I feel as if we're on the right track, we take multiple steps back. Our losing effort pushed us to 4-4 and 3rd in our division. And I was starting to realize that no matter how well I played, it was a team game and every position needed to ball out in order for us to be successful. Coming into the latter half of the season, our team set its sights on winning out so that we could at least consider this year somewhat of a success. And if we obtained our goal, we had a chance to earn a spot in a relevant bowl game. But we were playing a very good and underrated Pitt team, and they gave us trouble throughout the entire first half. I mean, they were on us, and that one snap was easy. But we finally got a bit of breathing room on this 37-yard reception that I probably should have gotten out of bounds on, but I was turned. But ultimately, we couldn't capitalize on anything but a field goal. And Pitt had absolutely no trouble matching our efforts on the other end. This had to have been my toughest challenge all season. I was just fortunate we were still in it in the fourth. It was absolutely brutal. The Pitt DBs had the strap on their waist. Gotta hand it to them. The team had one more shot to make the game interesting, and I did not want to bear another loss. But how could I impact the game with blocking efforts like this? Is that Aaron Donald? And to top it all off, the infamous check down late in the game when we clearly needed a miracle. This was by far my worst game of the entire season. 17 carries for 48 yards? I don't want to play the blame game, but I felt as if the O-line had given up. Come on, coach, get him in line. We've still got a lot of season left, and we can't afford this type of play. After our bye week, we matched up on the field against one of the toughest in the nation, Clemson University. And I'm not going to lie, my mindset began to change, albeit selfishly. We were below 500, and our dreams of putting the nation on notice had practically ended. But I was having one of the better seasons and performed as a top 10 back in the nation. In order to capitalize off this, I had to finish strong. Of course I wanted to win, but I couldn't abandon my personal goals either. And it looks like I could potentially affect both outcomes by taking off in a win for my longest return ever. That's how you start off a game. Let's go. EJ Williams wouldn't let us celebrate for long, tying the game up shortly thereafter. And unfortunately, we started having the same problems as last week in the first half. Man, this might be a long game. The special team unit smartened up and stopped kicking the ball my way altogether, effectively taking away one facet of my game. But I got a big sigh of relief when McCollum stepped up, head tapping the DB, breathing a bit of life back into us. And in the second half, I finally managed to break off a significant run. And for the first time in a while, I felt like the Hogs had my back. But the momentum came to a halt on the drive with a drop pass that an infant could catch. We gotta do better. And DJ and the Tigers showed us no remorse. We battled as hard as we could, but it was clear that we faced an elite team. But that didn't stop me from getting a couple points on the board. In short, I felt sorry for Zach. He had no chance. And in this cross-division rivalry game, despite starting off with a bang, we got cooked evenly on both sides. I knew it'd be a tough out, but I thought we'd fare better. At this rate, a bowl game seemed more and more unattainable. The Yellow Jackets had 2 games left in the season, and to make it to a bowl game, we desperately needed to win out. And with our next game against another FCS school, I had the chance not only to help the team win, but add to my already impressive resume this season. And punching the ball in for a tutty was the perfect way to add to that stat sheet. I was working the field in every way possible in the first half. I felt free. I was just out there making plays, and it was empowering. And because of that, for the first time in a while, I caught a receiving touchdown rumbling through the defenders to the end zone. And the sheer difference in my game was apparent when running behind a decent O-line, but they still managed to struggle occasionally. And for a second and a fourth, I was distraught. We ultimately performed well for most of the game though, and I was able to showcase my speed on a 29-yard tutty to the crib. It was all free game from that point forward. I guess they didn't expect us to have another gear, but we cruised to the win at home, keeping our bowl dreams alive for yet another week. Slick was back in rare form with 181 yards on the turf, breaking 4 20-plus yard runs and 2 tutties, not to mention the receiving one. This game would surely help my case in the offseason, and maybe more importantly, give our team a glimmer of hope. This was it. This was the game with everything on the line. For us, it was simple. We win or we go home. We leave everything we got out on the field. And to make things more interesting, it happened to be our most vital game of the season. With the Dogs in the midst of creating what many would call a dynasty, we felt disrespect. For most Georgia fans, we were written off. This wasn't anticipated to be that close of a game, and that's exactly why my team was getting every bit of gas I had in the tank. The Dogs' defensive reputation preceded them, but no matter how great, I wasn't going to back down, and neither were my teammates fighting alongside me. In the first quarter, we established a pretty good tone, and that sense of urgency carried us in this back and forth battle throughout the second. We fought tooth and nail, but I started to wonder if the talent of of Georgia's DBs started to overwhelm Zach under the center. Meanwhile, Stetson, the Georgia legend, seemed to be on cruise control. But I was determined to keep fighting for every yard. And maybe I tried too hard because I ended up costing my team a possession after this horrendous fumble while we were marching down the field. But despite my troubles, the defense stepped up, getting us the ball back and setting us up for this easy pass play for a tutty. But with Georgia being the more efficient team, they were able to wind down the clock and we never actually got another chance to score. In the end, we failed and I was partially to blame. If I hadn't fumbled, who knows what would have happened. Besides that, I was proud of my team. We may have not had the season we envisioned, but we played every game with passion and intensity. That's all I could ask for. With us not making a bowl game, my sophomore season had come to an end. The season may have not been the best, but I couldn't be more proud of my individual performance. I accumulated just about 1,300 rushing yards, far better than my performance in my freshman year. That, along with my 6.1 average, made a case for me being one of the best backs in the nation. In fact, I had the best year for any back in the ACC. We lit. But now, the real challenge is upon me. With my performance, I had the opportunity to talk with many Power 5 schools who were on record saying that they love to have it. Here as a Yellow Jacket, I have been given the keys to help the team and was pretty successful. What should I do? Transfer to a bigger school? After all, I am a draft hopeful. Or stay here and grind with the team that believed in me like no one else did? Let me know.